It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo, how are you guys doing this evening? Hopefully you guys are doing well. Let's start this off with a little introduction. I've been doing this a little bit more recently because we have a lot of new viewers on the channel. So my name is Chris. I'm an HVACR service technician here in Southern California. I started making these YouTube videos for my own service technicians. It was kind of a training aid. Quickly decided to make them public, and that was about 1.5 years ago, and everything just kind of grew from there, and this became what it is. So I started doing these live streams as a way to consolidate the questions, because out of the hundreds of emails and comments and Facebook comments and posts and different things that I get, a lot of the questions are repetitive. Some of them I don't necessarily get a chance to answer. I do make an effort to go through and read every single comment that I can get my eyes on. That's why, if you notice, if you pay attention to any of the YouTube comments, I'll usually give them a thumbs up and a heart to acknowledge that I've read the comment. Sometimes I'll respond to them. If not, I usually respond to them on these live streams. So especially the questions that I think could benefit everybody, because a lot of them may be repetitive questions, and it's a little difficult for me to answer them all. I never anticipated these live streams or these YouTube videos turning into this machine that has turned into. When I first started my channel 1.5 years ago, I think it was 1.5 years ago. Yeah, 27. Yeah. So anyways, when I first started the channel, I never realized that it was going to turn into this thing, and it actually has become a second job. I don't want it to be a second job. I never anticipated it doing what it did. Don't get me wrong, I do make some revenue from these videos, but in all honesty, I need to put my family first. So the comments, it's a little difficult to get to them all. In the very beginning, I was making 3 videos a week. I've tailored it down to 1 to 2 videos a week. And then I still do a live stream every week, but I try as hard as I can to get your guys' stuff. Okay. I want to make it clear though, that, these videos, they're really geared towards my own service technicians. And, I try to tailor them towards you guys too, but I also got to remember that these initially are for my own service technicians. I have my own small commercial refrigeration business that does 99% restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning work here in Southern California. And these are a training aid, okay? You know, what kind of convinced me to make them a training aid for everybody was just to share the little bit of knowledge that I have. I do not know everything. There's tons of other people that know much more than I. They just don't necessarily have a platform. I encourage everybody out there to share your knowledge. Hiding your knowledge, in my opinion, there's nothing good about it. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to be replaced, I promise you, unless you suck. In that case, you more than likely aren't going to have a lot of knowledge. I mean, you know, our jobs are so, we're in such need for service technicians right now. We need all the help we can get. So a lot of people have been starting up YouTube channels lately. Great, go for it. We need more help. We need more people sharing knowledge. You know, I do commercial refrigeration and air conditioning as far as restaurants go. You may do something different. We have guys that do residential. We have guys that do industrial. We have guys that do commercial refrigeration, supermarket stuff. I mean, share the knowledge, guys. Right now, we are lacking. There's 2 or 3 really good supermarket refrigeration channels. We need more. You know, my buddy Rookie Refrigeration, Ruben, is in here. He has a supermarket refrigeration channel. But you know, we need more. We need a lot more. So do me a favor, if you guys have that knowledge, consider sharing it. Okay. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm always willing to share, you know, any information that I have about how to launch a channel or anything like that. I will say, you know, you need to have thick skin. And if you don't talk correctly, if you don't say the correct terms, the comments are going to eat you alive. So be prepared for that. Okay. I try to be as open and honest as possible. So now that we're done with the introduction, last but not least, I want to make it clear too that I have a sponsor on my channel. My sponsor is Sporlan. Please go support Sporlan. Okay, go check out their website, buy their products. Sporlan is the best sponsor for me because they're not a demanding sponsor. You know, they make good products. They don't make snake oils or weird additives and crap like that. I can stand behind them, and they're good because they're not trying to control me. They're not trying to take over my channel. There's lots of people, horror stories that I've heard of other content creators that, you know, get themselves into a position where they feel like they owe everything to the sponsors and they have to do everything. They have to push different additives or whatever. So be it. That's not my channel. I don't plan on ever doing that. I'm going to do these my way. So yeah, that's it. Okay. I got a couple things I want to talk about. I definitely want to get to the chat too. My moderator, Justin's in here right now. He's going to help me to keep an eye on the chat because sometimes it can get a little bit out of hand. If you guys have questions and you'd like me to answer them, please put them in caps lock. That way we can try to see them. And if I don't answer your question right away, feel free to put it again, okay? If I'm not going to answer your question, I'll usually say, hey, I'm not going to answer your question right now, okay? So just keep putting it in there until I answer it, okay? Or one of the other moderators tells you to stop, all right? So yeah, just put them in caps lock. That helps me to get to them, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start talking real quick on my little list of stuff, and then I'll pay attention to the chat as best as possible, okay? Oh, Juan, the air conditioning guy, thank you very much. I really appreciate that super chat. So Juan asked me, could I ask everyone if they balance their own forced air unit blower wheels? I don't know. I mean, in the chat, you guys can answer that. I don't balance my own blower wheels. If a blower wheel's out of balance, it's time to go get another one. They're cheap enough for me. Swap them out. I'm not into balancing them out. That's just not my style. So be it. It's never been a very easy thing for me to do, but you know, hey, maybe the chat will say otherwise. So, all right. Also, there's going to be a movie quote in here. This one's a late 80s movie quote. So let's see if you guys can get this one. I tried to keep some of the more popular quotes out of the movie out of here. So, you know, try not to be a punk and go Google it too. Try to see if you guys can actually guess what the movie is. It'll come in about 28 minutes. So, right on. Okay, so really good question that I had, or actually, let's talk about the video. So the video that I did this last week was on a walk-in freezer door that wouldn't shut. Okay, the customer complained that it wouldn't shut. What I ended up finding was that the door heater had failed, causing ice all around the door. Okay, a lot of people commented, hey, I didn't even know there was heaters in those walk-in freezer doors. Well, there has to be some sort of a heat device because The point at which it's not a freezer anymore, the other side of the door, is going to be a lot warmer. Therefore, you're going to end up freezing that door shut, and that's going to be a problem. So we have to have a Moleon heater or a door heater around the door perimeter or the door frame. It usually keeps the gasket nice and warm, so that way the gasket can act as the door seal. Oftentimes, there might be two heaters in the door. There might be one in the door frame, and then there might be one in the door sweep. Okay, in my situation, it just had a bad door heater. Door heaters are not my favorite thing to do. And if any of you guys have ever changed a door heater on a walk-in freezer, you probably know what I'm talking about. Door heaters are probably the worst thing to do when you're working on a walk-in freezer, because you're in there, especially in my situation. I was in the walk-in cooler all day, so it's 38 degrees. I'm in a jacket. I've got the door open, so the negative 10-degree air from the walk-in freezer's, basically freezing my butt off. I was fighting a cold at that, but I mean, that's life. You just got to do what you got to do. But the walk-in freezer door heaters, you got to be so meticulous about the way that you do them. And if you don't follow all the proper procedures, then it comes back and bites you in the ass, meaning that when you're all done, if you snap the cover on and you've spent 6 hours putting this door heater on, and then the cover severs the heater, well, you got to start all over now. And not only do you have to start all over, you probably got to order a heater and come back 2 days later, remove all the ice again, and go through it all. Okay. I've done enough of these and I've screwed enough of them up that I'm very meticulous, and I take my time doing them properly. Whenever I change a walk-in freezer door heater, I'd say 99.9% of the time I'm going to change the hinges, the door closure, if the gasket, if it's bad, but the hinges and the door closure for sure. In my opinion, the way that the walk-in freezer doors work, especially if they have ice buildup, the customer's still trying to shut that door, and they're trying to shut it on ice. So something's got to give. Usually the door won't bend. Usually what happens is the hinges get damaged. But occasionally I've seen the doors buckle too, because someone's been closing it on ice for too long. But in my opinion, the hinges usually become weak, and sooner than later they're going to fail. So as part of the replacement, I usually put new hinges on there too. One of the biggest things about doing a walk-in freezer door, though, that you got to be very careful about is the threshold. And I showed in my video that once you pull the threshold up, and you pull up all the metal, you actually find that there's a crap ton of ice underneath that threshold. And if you don't get all that ice out, that ice is going to refreeze, okay, and then lift it up. And then on top of that, you got to melt all the ice and get rid of all the moisture all around the door frame, because the entire time you're working on it, that water will start dripping on your head and pissing you off. There's nothing worse than that. So again, it's a meticulous thing. The tools that I usually use is a vacuum, MAP gas torch, dead blow hammer, and patience, cutting wheel if I need to cut the tracks. In my situation, in this one, I only had to notch out the track at the bottom. The tops, the mitered edges were already cut because I used the OEM parts. Okay. So yeah, I think I'm sure I'll cover some more as we go on down the list. I'm going to look at the chat and see if there's anything that I'm missing yet. And then, and I'll see what I can, get to here. Let me see. How come that freezer didn't have a floor? Prime time. It's actually very common out here that it'll usually be 50-50 that we have a freezer without a floor or a freezer with a raised floor. I actually prefer the freezers without a floor. So when they poured that pad, they actually poured, I think it's like a 6 or an 8-inch pad where the freezer lays. So there's plenty of concrete there to insulate it from the outside. But it's very important that you can't just set a walk-in freezer on a really thin pad, because depending on your outdoor ambient, especially here in Southern California where it gets really warm, the heat will come up into the box from underneath the slab. So the other alternative, like Primetime was mentioning, was that we have a raised floor. So it's usually a 6-inch insulated floor that sits on top of a thin concrete pad. The problem with the insulated floors, in my opinion, is that when people defrost the walk-in coils, if they don't do it very slowly and very carefully, if you get water on the floor and it's raised, that water is going to go underneath the floor, and then it's going to refreeze and lift up the floor and buckle it. That's why it's so important when you're working on a walk-in freezer, defrosting an evaporator coil. Even if you don't have a raised floor, you don't ever want to get water on the floor. If you don't have a raised floor and you just have concrete, the water will freeze on the tile, and then it'll be almost impossible to get up. It's just a nightmare. It becomes a giant ice skating rink. So just be very careful. But yeah, we have them where they're raised floors. We have them where they're not. It's just an extra thick pad. So, all right, let me see. Any questions that I missed, just keep throwing them down on the bottom, okay? Taylor, you said you just applied for an HVAC apprenticeship. any tips going forward? Taylor, when and if you do get your apprenticeship, which you will, okay, because we all need help. As long as you're a good tech and you have a good head on your shoulders, you're going to get a job. Just keep your head straight, know when to keep your mouth shut, know when to open your mouth, know when to ask questions, and know when not to ask questions. The biggest tip of advice I can give for an apprentice is try to figure out what your mentor or your, whoever you're working with is going to ask of you, especially when it comes to tools, and predict what he's going to ask for you and have it ready. So if, for instance, if you're changing a compressor and he's going to ask you to go get the torches and the vacuum pump, have it ready before he even asks you. Okay. Try to anticipate that stuff. And while you're on the roof, I say this all the time, take pictures of every piece of equipment's model number. Even if it's stuff you don't work on, take pictures of the equipment. When you get off work, that's when the real work starts. You go home and you start researching, downloading manuals, reading about equipment. So that way, when you're working with your mentor, and he tells you about stuff, you could say, hey, you know what? I read about that and I was curious about this, So feel free to send me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com, and I can try to give you some more information about that, okay? All right. Wow, that movie quote came in a lot faster than I thought, huh? All right. Let's see what else. See what I'm missing. All right. I don't see anything else in here right now. So, yeah, Dizzle got it really quick. Nightmare on Elm Street. That's right. So, yeah, great, man. That's the 80s version, Nightmare on Elm Street, okay? Not saying I don't appreciate the 2010 version, but the 80s version was so much better. It was just a great movie. But the 2010 version, yeah, that was cool. You got some explanation as to why Freddy was who he was and what happened. So that was kind of cool. But all right, let's see what else. Who does my hair? Who does my hair? I don't know. Me? It's actually time that I shave my head, to be honest with you. So let's see what else we got going on in here. All right. Yes, there you go. Keep thinking. They want you to anticipate what they want, That's the biggest tip of advice. I mean, I've got people that work with me and they know, hey, we're getting to this point and, I want them to think that, because what you don't realize is the more you anticipate what I'm going to want, that just means that you're thinking ahead and you're starting to get into that mindset of a service technician that is thinking of everything. I'm a service technician brazing in a compressor. I'm not necessarily just thinking about that braze joint. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next. I'm trying to, when I go down to my truck, I'm thinking, okay, what am I done with? I take a tool down every time I go down to my truck and then bring a tool back up. There's still going to be a crap ton of stuff on the roof when you're all finished, but there's one less thing up on the roof. Makes your job a little bit easier. So, trying to anticipate what your mentor is going to want is actually teaching you, and you're going to learn. And you also learn to be a better service technician too, because as a better service technician, when I go into jobs, I said that wrong. I implied that I was a good service technician, but as a service technician, I try to be better every single day. And, I try to anticipate the worst. And even when I go into something, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, how can this go wrong? So that way I can be prepared for it. If I'm going to be brazing, what in here can catch on fire? What happens if I'm unsweating the compressor? I know you're supposed to cut a compressor out, but life happens. Sometimes you got to unsweat it. What happens if I'm unsweating the compressor and the oil flames out? Is there anything that's going to catch on fire? Just thinking ahead, trying to anticipate. So, all right. Let me see what else we got in here. 22-year-old tech, keep thinking. And you said you hate when people don't ask if they don't know. Tech here. And you hate when people don't ask if they don't know. I don't know what you meant by that, keep thinking. Rephrase that for me. All right. Ernesto says he was taught to think 15 seconds ahead of the senior techs to help them out to bring tools. That's a great idea. Ernesto is HVACR vlogger. He's actually got a YouTube channel too. So, yeah. Do I know any channel that does video commercial food equipment? No, I don't know anybody that does the hot side commercial food equipment. I don't. I'm trying to think. No, nobody that does it regularly, like on a daily. So no, not that I can think of right now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get to my list here. So great question I had. Someone asked me, and I'm paraphrasing and adding to this question, but their question is buried inside here. Are smart devices dumbing down the trade? Actually, this was a YouTube comment from someone, I think kind of criticizing a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay to criticize me, all right? I'm cool with it. But I think it was kind of criticizing in a way saying that, hey, you know, you don't necessarily need all those fancy tools and those digital things to diagnose. You can do it without those tools. And that is very true. Okay. We don't need iPads, tablets, smartphones. We don't need S-Man 480 digital gauges, field piece jobbling probes, measure quick, field piece app. All that. We don't need it. We can do our job with a set of compound gauges, a couple thermocouple pipe clamp temperature devices, right? And a pressure temperature chart. We can do our job. But how do we get airflow? Okay, so Measure Quick can do an estimated airflow calculation. It's not dead on, but it's better than nothing. Okay, Measure Quick can do that airflow calculation for us. So it's not that I need Measure Quick or the Field Piece app to do my job for me. Personally, what I use those smart devices and the digital tools for, I see them to be greater, to be more accurate, and I see them to consolidate information for me so that way I can make an informed decision. So there's nothing better than opening up my tablet, looking down at it, seeing my superheat, subcooling, estimated airflow, current draw, everything. And then I look at everything and I can see the whole picture, right? I'm always preaching big picture. I could see the whole picture and I could say, oh, wow, yeah, I think this thing has low airflow. Therefore, look at our superheat's really low. You know, now in the past we could do that too, but in the past to diagnose low airflow, we would have to put our service gauges on there. We'd see low superheat. Then we'd walk away after we calculated it on the pressure temperature chart, right? Mind you, it wasn't real-time superheat because we made a calculation and 2 seconds later it changed and then it changed and then it changed and it continues to change, right? As the load changes in the building. Digital gauges show you that continuous real-time superheat. The estimated airflow that Measure Quick gives you saves me hours and hours of duct traversing using an anemometer to measure the airflow to the unit to prove that I had low airflow. Because guess what? Static pressure doesn't tell us true airflow necessarily, okay? Static pressure can give us an estimation, total external static, but the best bet, even forgetting about Measure Quick, is to actually measure the airflow. Okay, traversing the ductwork is a really good method. Using flow hoods. Flow hoods can also be a little difficult though too. Okay, we're not going to go into that tangent. I'm not very familiar with flow hoods, but I understand how they work. But there's a whole dynamic of how they can be inaccurate too. But digital devices, smart devices, I think they're helping the trade. And I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say that we as service technicians diagnose more problems, are more thorough because of smart devices and digital devices these days. Now, yes, there's some people that are lazy and not really thinking and want the apps to diagnose for them. Okay, you're never going to control that. Those are the same people that do beer can cold, and grab the suction line and say it's low on charge and that kind of stuff. Okay, you're never going to solve for those people. But we are at the best time, in my opinion, in our careers right now in this industry because we have so much information at our fingertips. Hey, guess what? We got a problem and we want to know, we need help. We ask the Google. We turn on our phone. We message a friend. Someone sends an email to me. I'm usually not going to answer the question. Someone sends an email to another guy. Someone goes on Facebook in a group and asks people. Guys, it's the best time right now to become a technician and to come up in the trade because you have so much information at your fingertips. So no, I do not think that smart devices are dumbing down the trade. Okay. I think that they're making the trade better. Okay. Let's make the trade great again. Right. I think that the smart devices are helping our industry. All right. Rookie refrigeration. I'm going to ruin all of you guys. Ruben asks me, who's my NFL team? I am not into sports whatsoever. I could care less about any sports. Don't pay attention. So I probably just lost half my audience. I literally I am so pathetic that I just sit here and hang out with my family, watch TV, and make HVAC YouTube videos. That's all I do. So I don't even get to do my own hobbies anymore, which I need to get back into those, which my passion is camping, backpacking, hiking. That's my passion right there. If I could go disappear, I just had to put my dog down this last summer, but my dog and I would go disappear into our local mountains for the weekend, just a backpack on my back. That was like the best time of my life whenever I would do that because it was just so peaceful. I even took my family to do that one time where we went backpacking. That was epic. That's my passion, but yeah, I'm not into sports whatsoever. So, all right. Missed any questions? Throw them back down in the chat. Okay, guys. Let me see. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm sure I missed stuff. I'm going to go ahead and cover some more of my topics. Keep throwing them in there, guys, okay? What if, okay, so Dogs Green is asking me what, I always check fan rotation on an exhaust fan. What if it's spinning backwards? If it's a 3-phase exhaust fan, then I'm going to reverse any 2 legs going to the motor. If it doesn't have a VFD, you need to be careful about places that you rotate phases. Actually, no, yeah, coming out of the VFD, that's where I'm going to rotate it. If it's a single phase motor, then usually it has some rotation taps. But if a single phase motor is running backwards and nobody's touched it, more than likely you're going to have a motor that's failing. Juan, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that super chat. That's really awesome that you do that, Juan. So, all right, let's see what we're missing. Thought on pump out, not recycling, pump down. Thought on pump out, non-recycling, pump down. I don't know what you mean by that, Total Tech. Are you saying vent the refrigerant, or are you saying just pump it? I don't know. Give me some context on that one, Total Tech. I don't quite know if I understand what you're asking me there. All right. How do I clean a rooftop grease trap? A rooftop grease trap on an exhaust fan? I don't. I tell them to get the grease cleaners out there. Yeah, there's special people that do grease. I don't mess with grease. There's people that do it. But I will tell you that here in California, and actually I'll cover this. This is another question I get all the time. But here in California, we're not allowed to wash very much stuff down the drain. Storm, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. I really, really appreciate that. You're not asking me stupid questions, Storm. Thank you very much for that super chat, man. Awesome, bud. Thank you. All right, let's see. Let me see. How do I? Oh, so grease traps. Yeah. The new Calgon blue coil cleaning crap that takes care of grease really good. But technically in California, you're not supposed to be washing that stuff down the drain. So you got to do what you got to do. Let me see what I'm missing. Any tips for books to prepare for refrigeration journeyman test? Jesse, I don't know what's going to be on your journeyman test. Okay. I will say that my favorite book when it comes to refrigeration is Commercial Refrigeration by Air Conditioning Technicians. The really cool thing, and I got a chance to meet Dick Wurz and talk to him about this book, but I'm going to tell you guys what I like the most about that book, okay, is that there is new school and old school mixed into that book. There is rules of thumb in that book, and there is new detailed correct information. I'm not saying there's incorrect information, but Dick Wurz does a really good job of explaining things and making them understandable. It is a great, great book. Now, whether or not that'll get you past your journeyman test, I don't know. I'm sure there's some required reading to get past your journeyman test. I would highly suggest you do that and not that, okay? All right. Let's see what else. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go to why, and this was a silly one, but I'm going to answer it anyway. So the question was, referring to my walk-in freezer with a failed defrost heater, I pointed out about the silent alarm on the walk-in freezer, and someone had asked me, why do they have silent alarms in kitchens? That just seems weird. Well, the reason why they have silent alarms is because we live in a world where people are assholes and they go and try to rob people, okay? So they have a silent alarm in the kitchen that's usually hidden. They have them strategically located all over the kitchen. They usually have them in the walk-in cooler and the walk-in freezer. The theory is that if the building ever gets robbed, everybody that's in the kitchen can run into the walk-in cooler, latch the door shut from the inside, hit the panic button. The panic button usually doesn't sound an audible alarm. It sends code blue to the police, and the police know there's a robbery happening. They usually come code blue, ask me how I know, and they'll come sometimes with helicopters. They don't come sirens. They come in full force with guns drawn, and they want to figure out what's going on. So panic alarms are great in the restaurants. You just have to know as a service technician when you're around them. You have to know what they look like, so that way you can have them disarmed and put on test while you're working on said equipment. Trust me, again. All right, let me see. Have I ever changed an evaporator with a separated grid on a Manitowoc ice machine? No, I've never changed an evaporator with a separated grid on a Manitowoc ice machine. Most of the time, if the evaporator's bad, the customer ends up buying a new machine in my situation. Just had an isomatic machine that had a separated grid, but the machine was 5-6 years old, so the customer opted to replace it. They ended up putting a new isomatic in there, which I have a few choice words to say about the new isomatic machine with the new digital circuit board. If you guys don't know, isomatic was the last machine to hold out. They still had all their mechanical controls. Well, they finally went digital. I just installed my first one, and it was a little interesting. So anyways, the Manitowoc machines, no, never had to change a grid on one. I've had them very dirty before, you know, had to clean them, but never had to change a grid. Usually, like I said, the customer just changes the whole machine. So you pulled down on one of those alarms not knowing what it was. Yeah, Ernesto, it's not good, man. 5 to 10 minutes. Yep. Cop cars outside. Yep. And they were pissed off, I bet. I did one in San Bernardino one time inadvertently. I was changing a walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer door, and I didn't even touch the alarm, but just banging on the door ended up setting the alarm off. And I was a cocky kid at the time, younger guy. And when the manager came in and said, you know, there's police outside, they want to talk to you, I said, no, I'm busy. Just tell them to come in here. Yeah, the sergeant at the time, this was probably in the early 2000s, San Bernardino in the city, and the sergeant was not happy at all when he came into the walk-in freezer and told me to step out of the building and wanted to have a talk with me. He proceeded to chew my ass out. So, wow, these super chats, guys. Philip, thank you very much for that super chat, bud. That's really awesome. So, yeah, panic alarms are not fun. So, if I'm missing stuff, guys, do me a favor, throw it back down in there again, okay? Let me see what I'm missing here. All right. So on my list, question I had, this was on an old video, and I've gotten this question so many times, guys. So I'm going to try to describe the video to you. I had a carrier package unit. It was a tiny little 5-ton carrier package unit. It was actually the one that I had an apprentice brazing with me. Okay. I had an apprentice working with me at the time, and I was letting him braze, and everybody was just eating him alive because of his brazing skills. Guys, that was the first time he ever tried brazing. He did a great job. He doesn't work for me anymore, but he was a good apprentice and he was a good hire. So, in that video, we ended up changing a compressor amidst many other things. We ended up pulling the condenser out, changing the compressor because the unit had a cracked discharge line. And I got all these questions in the world. Why did you change that compressor? Just add oil to it. It would have been fine. Put refrigerant in it. It was noisy. Guys, I do things for a certain reason, okay? In that situation, the reason why I changed that compressor was because from my experience on those carrier package units, I had a compressor that was probably from 2004, all right? And it started making a lot of loud noise. It had a cracked discharge line. In my opinion, there was something damaged inside the compressor. Yes, I could have tried to add oil to it. And yes, I could have brazed the leak. And yes, it probably would have worked, but for how long? In my experience on the Copeland compressors, if they crack coming directly out of the compressor, it usually means that there's something off inside that compressor and it's vibrating, causing that stress point. Okay. So yes, I could have put a braze joint on there and it probably would have lasted maybe another year. Who knows? But guess what? I did it and that thing is still running to this day. It's fixed. I changed the compressor. I did what I thought was best. Okay. There's a lot of things that you guys don't see. There's a lot of things that you don't know when I'm doing these videos. And there's a lot of reasons that are factors that go into me making decisions like that. So it is what it is. Joe, thank you for that pair that's jumping saying you're my #1 fan. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate that. All right. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know what I had balls to say there, Ernesto, but I can't remember what I just said. The comments are delayed, so it's like I don't know what you're responding to because I honestly can't even remember what I just said. I'm just running my mouth right now. So, all right. All right, let's see what we got going on. Okay, Kevin Rollins, the money. These are people donating to my channel. Okay, you can do it via super chats. I do not require anybody to donate to my channel, but I will bring it up. You know, supporting any YouTube channel, any content creator out there does definitely help this. Okay, help people to continue to do this content. We as content creators do get AdSense, meaning that when you guys see a commercial in a YouTube video and you hit that skip button, it's cool. I do the same. Actually, I don't do it anymore, but I used to do the same thing. In fact, you're actually hurting the creator because yes, those commercials suck, but those commercials are the little bit of income that creator gets. Okay. So luckily I don't do these videos for the revenue. The revenue does help. I'm not going to lie, but I do these videos to share my knowledge. I have a full-time job. I run a service company. These videos are just a little side hustle that I do. Okay. But as far as the money that you see right there, that's a way that the people that are viewing chose to donate a little bit of cash to me via whatever they want, super chatting or whatever. So it is what it is, but it is not required. Okay. All right. Yeah, I would get a call back for sure. Okay, hang on. All right. Let's see. How do I prepare for low temp walk-in freezers? The person was asking me that because I probably said I was cold as hell wearing a beanie. How do you get mentally prepared when you go to work in a walk-in freezer? First off, I can say is if you're a refrigeration technician working in restaurants, you can't wait for your company to tell you that you're going to be working on a walk-in freezer today. You have to assume the worst. So it doesn't matter if it's 120 degrees summer. You need to have proper clothing in your van. You need to have, if you work on warehouse freezers, you need to have gloves, beanies, probably a bib, all that fancy stuff. Dealing with restaurants, in my case, I do fine with a sweatshirt, a beanie, and just some gloves. But you need to be best prepared. Don't come to work without your jacket. Don't take your jacket out of your van and forget to put it in there because you're going to be standing working in a walk-in freezer. You still got to do the work. So make sure that you're prepared for that stuff. So as far as how you prepare for that, you know, it comes with time getting used to it. Working in a walk-in freezer, I would say that when my apprentice is working with me, he's probably a little bit colder than I am because I don't even pay attention to the fact that I'm cold. Oftentimes, I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I'm in and out of there and I'm knocking it out. Usually it's the person that's watching me that's getting the coldest. So there's nothing, you know, it does suck being the person that's watching, but use that to your advantage, right? Absorb as much information as you can if you're the apprentice working in a walk-in freezer with your, you know, whatever you want to, the person, your mentor or whatever, right? You know, absorb as much information so that way you're not cold. Start thinking, okay, I need to do this, anticipating what he's going to ask you to do. Keep yourself busy, run to the truck, grab different things. Someone left a really good comment and it made a lot of sense. When you leave the walk-in freezer to run out to your truck, keep your jacket on, okay? Even though you look like a silly weirdo in the middle of the summer running out to your van with a beanie and a jacket on, it's going to help because the more you take it off, the more you put it on, it's going to start to cause problems. You're going to get issues, okay? Walking in and out, you can get heat stroke, I mean, all kinds of different things. You can get, you know, going from the hot and cold temperature can shock your body. Be cautious about that. Make the trips limited in and out of the freezer. But, you know, just have your protective stuff, your PPE ready, okay? Have your beanie, have your gloves, and be cautious as you're walking around. Walk flat-footed. Don't walk on your toes or your heels because you're going to fall on your ass if you do that. So, all right, let's see what else I got. Just saw my message about knowledge sharing and liability. Sorry, I'm late. Oh, no, Alphonse. I actually have that on my list of things that I want to talk about. So I got some very interesting questions from someone. Oh yeah, and the other thing I wanted to point out too, when you go out of the walk-in freezer, leave your safety glasses in the walk-in freezer, or your glasses, whatever you're wearing, because if you leave with them on and then go back in, they're going to fog up. So just leave them in the freezer, and then that way when you come back in, you put your glasses back on, they won't fog up as bad. Okay, they may still fog up if your body temperature is really hot, but walking out of the freezer with your safety glasses on and going to your truck, they're going to instantly fog, and you're going to stand there trying to, you know, clear them up. So, all right. Do I run a union shop? No, I live in Southern California where we do not have a strong union. I work in restaurant refrigeration where the union is non-existent within the restaurant industry. I have no opinion either way, union or non-union. I will say I've heard negative things about union companies and I've heard negative things about non-union companies. So either way, whatever floats your boat, okay? But no, I do not run a union shop. I couldn't profitably run a union shop doing restaurant refrigeration in Southern California. It just, the prices are too high. I just couldn't afford it. All right, let me go ahead and go to my list here. So, how do I properly order door heaters and or parts? Okay, and I'm paraphrasing the question again, for that matter, anything, right? To properly order parts and to know what parts to order, you have to have experience, okay? So I mentioned in the beginning of the stream, when I do door heaters, I change door hinges. That's from experience, okay? But if you don't have the experience, talk to other service technicians and listen to what they have to say. Pay very close attention when you're disassembling things, okay? When you're taking a heater track cover off of a door heater, don't just yank the damn thing off from the bottom. Don't get the bottom loose and then just start pulling because you're going to end up bending the heater track. You got to think logically. You're dealing with a very, very small, thin sheet of metal. And if you pull from one end, it's going to bend, right? So you got to think about things and you got to try to predict the worst. As far as ordering the parts, you just want to look at it and think like, what am I going to have to do to change this heater? You know, when you go to diagnose a door heater, don't just look at it and say, yeah, it's bad. Measure the voltage. Lift up the threshold if you can. Look and see if there's ISOL under there. Look and see if there's something that the heater sits in that it winds back and forth. Looked in my situation, when I changed the threshold, I pulled it up and I noticed that the grout was all messed up. I didn't see that because I didn't diagnose it. Well, actually, yeah, no, I didn't diagnose. Someone else diagnosed it. So I didn't see that I was going to have to take a threshold with me. So, you know, we didn't know that. And I ended up having to pick up a threshold on the fly. And it extended my job by about an hour and a half because we had to stop what we were doing, have a stainless steel shop make a threshold. We took a lunch. I sent the guy that was working with me to go get the threshold. It took him about an hour to get back, and I couldn't do anything really. I put the hinges on, but I couldn't do much until we got the threshold. So anticipating the worst and trying to think what you're going to need is very important. When it comes to any parts in general, understanding sequence of operation and what might go into that. Again, going to change a door heater and thinking, okay, why did this heater fail? As you know, yes, it's bad. Yes, it has to be changed. But the entire time I'm taking it apart, I'm looking at it saying, why would this have failed? I'm trying to find a reason. And then in the bottom corner of my door heater, there was one small burn mark on the door gasket. So what that told me was very most likely the electrical short happened right there. And it wasn't enough to trip the breaker, but it was enough to cause the heater to fail. So just understanding sequence of operation, you know, trying to think of what you're going to go through. All right. I don't have any magic thing to tell you what parts to order for every single door heater other than when I change a door heater, I change hinges. That's, you know, that's just my thing that I do. Okay. Can I talk about liabilities on a job for those doing side jobs? Scott asked me that question. So first off, I don't do side work. Okay. The reason why I don't do side work is because I don't have insurance that covers me when I'm doing side work. I mean, technically I do because I have my own business, but you get what I'm saying. If I'm a normal service technician and I want to do side work, who's insuring you? Okay. Whose tools are you using? If you choose to do side work, so be it. That's on you. But remember something, that my service company carries insurance, liability insurance. I have auto insurance. I have workers' comp. I have everything on my service techs. When you're doing side work, you don't have any of that. And if you break something, you're liable. Legally, you're not even allowed to do so much side work unless you creatively bill, and the bill happens to be under the legal amount to have a contractor's license. There's some creative billing practices that you can do to get away with some side work. And then guess what happens when you do that side job and that not any fault of your own, that motor that you installed on the condenser fails when it's only 2 months old? Who's going to warranty it? And when are you going to do it? Are you going to go out there and do it when, you know, during the day when you're supposed to be at your normal job? It just starts to create a problem. So, I'm not saying you can't do side work, but there is a lot of liabilities that are involved in that, okay? The next thing is, are you using your service truck? Does your boss know you're using your service truck? And did you know that according to the IRS, your company is actually supposed to report that you drive your service truck home every night so that way the IRS can tax you on that? I mean, there's so much that I think I went off on a tangent where that didn't even make sense. That was a fun fact. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. My brain goes in weird places sometimes. But, you know, there's a lot of liabilities when it comes to side work, okay? What happens if, you know, you're installing a furnace and something catches on fire? Who are they going to come after? You? Is your insurance going to cover you? No, because your insurance doesn't know that you're a contractor doing side work. I mean, it's a problem. So, again, I'm not trying to discourage side work completely, but personally, I don't do it. It's just a headache for me. So there's lots of liabilities involved in that. You know, anyways, that's my 2 cents on that one. Sorry if I was going negative on that one, but all right. Yeah, I really appreciate the thumbs up button, guys. It really does help out the stream when you guys hit that thumbs up button, okay? Maybe I've never seen this on Chris's live stream. Yeah, sorry if the video clarity is going in and out. That's a bummer. All right, am I still going to put up tool review videos? Yes, I am, Fluke196. Just haven't gotten to it, but yes, I will. I still have an AHR recap video that I started working on today, too, so we're going to be getting that coming out, too. So the AHR recap's going to come first. I got some cool interviews with Sporlin, with some new products and stuff, and then I've got some video footage. I'm trying to piece together the best footage that I have. This is the first time I ever went to an event with, like, a legit camera, so I'm not that great at filming stuff, so I got to kind of piece it together creatively to make it look half-assed good, so. All right, all right, let me go ahead and see what else we got going on here. Resi techs. So what tips do I have for a residential service technician that's crossing over into commercial refrigeration? I actually got a question about this yesterday, but then I had someone in the comments ask me right before the stream too. So I'm going to hit it up and kind of converge the two. So residential service technician, the first bit of advice that I can give you if you're a residential service technician and you want to get involved is fully understand the refrigeration cycle and how it works. Okay. Just looking at pressures doesn't do anything for you. Pressures they will not continue you through your career just understanding what pressures are. You need to understand temperatures. Pay attention to temperatures. I don't care if you're doing residential or refrigeration. The temperatures are going to tell you everything, because guess what? We have 50 different flavors of refrigerant and they all run different pressures, but the temperatures, they stay the same, meaning that the saturation temperature, you're still going to run a 55-degree coil, or whatever it may be. On a commercial refrigeration walk-in cooler, you're still going to run a 25-degree evaporator coil, right? Because you're still trying to maintain a 35-degree box. So the saturation temperature, if you just look at the saturation temperature, the pressures will follow, and you won't get so focused and freaked out when you see that the pressures change from whatever refrigerant to whatever refrigerant. So that's the biggest tip of advice, is understand temperatures, okay? Excuse me. Understanding temperatures is really going to get you going, okay? Understanding the electrical process that happens, okay? When we go into commercial refrigeration or commercial air conditioning, either one, okay, you may not be dealing with 24-volt control voltage anymore. In commercial refrigeration, you might be dealing with 460-volt coil voltage or 208-volt coil voltage or even 115-volt coil voltage, right? If you're dealing with a Trane Voyager IntelliPack unit, it might have 115-volt contactors. It's still the same concept, right? You still check voltage the same. It's just a higher voltage. So it's really not that scary. If you understand the basics of how to troubleshoot things, it's going to cross over. When you get into commercial, whether it be air conditioning or refrigeration, yeah, there's going to be some different controls. There's going to be some different control strategies, different things like that. But if you understand the basic concepts, if you understand electrical flow, right, it's going to still make sense. It's really not that huge of a difference. You're just dealing with bigger equipment. You've got bigger wrenches, basically, okay? So I've never done residential air conditioning myself as far as the business goes. I mean, I've done it for family and stuff like that. But it's still the same basic refrigeration practices, just amplified. Okay. So just understanding that. Kevy, thank you very much for that super chat, man. I really appreciate that. Or that super sticker, I guess, is technically the pair dancing. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Christian has asked if anyone here has seen any refrigeration equipment, including AC units, explode on the job. I've seen stuff catch on fire, not even with flammable refrigerants. And that's something to think about too. With just, R404A or 134A, the oil can still ignite. So when you have a burnout, I've seen a flame come out of a compressor. I've seen a wall that's torched from a burnout where, the terminal vented and the oil ignited. And there was a brief, little flame coming out. I've seen it. So it happens on anything, but I've never seen equipment explode now. And I wouldn't worry about equipment exploding so long as you're following proper refrigeration practices. I know there's some crazy videos that popped up on social media last year of those, like third world countries where things exploded and people got killed and different things like that. Mind you guys, a lot of that had to do with improper refrigeration practices, not pulling a proper vacuum, people purging the system with oxygen, like silly stuff like that. So be careful. Just follow proper practices. How is meeting all the famous social media techs? Ernesto asks me. HVACR vlogger. So that was very cool. Getting to go to the AHR show and meeting all these other content creators. That was really neat. I got to, and I said this on the last one, guys, but the highlight of the AHR show, right? There was so many cool things, right? Getting to have dinner with Gil and Scott, HVAC rookie. Getting to sit down at a dinner table with Andrew Greaves, Dick Wers, Brian Orr, and Jim Bergman, all at the same end of the table, having a beer, or they're drinking whatever drinks they're drinking and eating dinner. That was really cool to get sit down and have conversation with those guys. That was really, really neat. That was probably one of the highlights of that event. But there were so many other ones. Getting to sit down with the founder of Field Piece and have dinner or have a lunch with him while we were playing Topgolf. That was really cool. You know, getting to meet all the Sporlan crew, all the really awesome people from Sporlan. And actually, again, silly fun fact, right? Sitting down, going to dinner with the people from Sporlan and my contacts there, and then talking with them at dinner and realizing that a lot of them live and or have family in the place where I was born, which is Rolla, Missouri. That was really cool to sit down and talk to them like, oh yeah, and just mention to them, yeah, I was born in Missouri. And they were like, where? And then, you know, just guys, it was such a great experience. Again, I'm hoping that the recap video that I make kind of shows, you know, how cool it was. It's probably not going to translate completely, but it was a very humbling experience to get to sit down and meet all the other HVAC YouTubers, Instagrammers, all those different things. It was really cool. So, all right. Let me see what else. You would think R290 can explode. Christian Fredericks. Yes, it can, but let's break this down. What do you need for an explosion to happen? Okay, what do you need for fire? What do you need for combustion? You need oxygen, you need fuel, and you need a spark. So if you have an R290 system and it's a refrigerator, okay, R290 does not have oxygen in the system. Okay, you need the right amount. It needs the perfect mixture of oxygen to be correct, right? So R290 itself is not going to explode unless it's introduced into an environment that has oxygen and has an ignition source too. So within the sealed system, R290 is not going to explode. Now, I guess there's a potential for a terminal vent to possibly slightly ignite, but I'm going to tell you that even if you had a terminal vent, in my opinion, the more I think about it, that amount of R290, first off, is a very minimal amount. 150 grams is the max charge on a refrigerator in the US right now. And that is going to come out at such a high pressure that it's not even going to give a chance for the flame to ignite. By the time there's a potential for a flame to ignite, most of the R290 is going to have left the system, and there might just be like a little candle flame coming out of it. I would love to do a video, if I can, I would love to do a video where I try to light an R290 refrigerator on fire. One of these days I'll try to do that if I don't piss off my neighbors enough and have them call the cops on me. Because that experimental R290 refrigerator, I still have just sitting on the side of my shop, and I'd love to just try to catch that thing on fire just to show people how nothing's going to happen, I don't think. So I probably shouldn't encourage that kind of experimentation, but you know, it is what it is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep going on my list here. Do I still eat out at restaurants? Yeah, I do. First off, ignorance is bliss. I can also tell when I walk into a restaurant, I can tell by the mannerisms of the staff and by the managers and different things, whether or not that restaurant is clean, even if I can't see in the back of the kitchen. I could walk in there and I could just look at the bar. I can look at the bar refrigerators. I can look at the bar top. I can look at the appliances and just recognize things where people are lazy. I can tell if gaskets are hanging off the box, you know, on every single refrigerator, then they probably really don't care very much. But you know, it's funny too, because I've even had like a little taco shop that, I was sitting at a bar one time talking to my favorite little taco shop, and the manager came over and he says, "Hey, you do refrigeration, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, would you like to do some side work?" Well, immediately I was turned off by that one when he asked me to do side work, right? Because if a manager of a restaurant approaches you and asks you if you want to do side work, that means he's too cheap to pay his existing contractors as it is, right? Let alone could he afford the crazy rates what a normal contractor could charge, right? Because this was a hole-in-the-wall taco shop. So first off, I was completely taken away. Hey, Ruben, thank you very much for that super chat, man. Thank you. Dude, that's awesome, bud. Thank you. Really cool, bud. So, you know, I basically got sidetracked, but that was a good sidetrack. Thank you, Ruben. So anyways, the guy asked me if I wanted to do side work, and I just said, "Hey, bud, look, I love eating here. I don't really want to mix work with what I like. Okay. So please, if you don't mind." And he said, "I totally understand, man." You know, but again, when people ask me to do side work, it's an immediate turnoff because I know they're cheap asses. So, all right, let me see what I'm missing. What equipment or units am I not comfortable working on? Mr. Psychometrics. As far as units that I'm not comfortable working on, I've never worked on a chiller, so it's not that I can't, but I just wouldn't want to screw anything up. I understand basic concepts of a chiller, but I've just never worked on one. So I'm going to be very leery about working on things I've never worked on before or don't know anything about, or I'm going to call a lot of people and ask them questions before I dive headfirst into it. So I'm not necessarily scared of it per se. I'm just very cautious because I don't want to ruin the customer's equipment. So, you know, things like someone could just jump into a chiller and not understand that you don't ever want to turn the pump off on a chiller when the refrigeration is still running because you can freeze the barrel. Things like that can happen. Understand basic concepts. So, all right, let's see what else we got. Oh, Ted, dude, thank you very much for that super chat, Ted. I really appreciate it, bud. That was awesome. I know you're just trying to match Ruben, but I appreciate it anyways. So, music. This is a great one. Okay, so someone had asked me in my door heater video when I was working on that. Someone had asked me, "Hey, what was I listening to?" Hey, Joe, thank you for that super chat, bud. I really appreciate these guys. You guys are flipping awesome. All right. Definitely check out Joe's channel. I'm hoping that the thing is popping up. I've been plugging the overtime channel too. So definitely check out the overtime channel if you guys haven't already, and or Joe's YouTube channel. Guys, if there's any other YouTubers in here, just click on their name and there'll be an option to go to their channel. But I'm going to plug the overtime channel real quick, but I think the night bot is, or the moderator bot has been plugging it anyway. So, but music when you're working. So, I do not think that is proper for you to be wearing headphones when you're working. Okay, I understand if you need ear protection because you're working in a mechanical room, that's a whole different story. Okay, but when we're working on a roof in an open environment, or we're working in a restaurant, I don't think it's appropriate to have two headphones in your ear. Okay, at a minimum you need to have one if you have to at all, because you need to be able to hear when things are going wrong. You need to be able to walk through the store and hear things, you know, and have your senses on while you're working. Having two sets of headphones in if you don't need them. And what I mean by don't need them is, I understand if you're working in a mechanical room where it's extremely loud and you have chillers and you have racks running and everything, and you got to have ear protection. I get that. Okay. But if you're walking through a restaurant, what happens if the manager walks up behind you and starts talking to you and you can't hear him? You look like an ass, basically. Okay. So I don't agree with having headphones in while you're working. I do keep a Bluetooth on one ear, but I don't have it in both ears. Usually I'm okay with job site radios if it's appropriate and I'm on a roof, or if I'm in a walk-in and the customers can't hear it. Job site radios are great because you can still hear what's going on in the building. So it's very important that we have our senses about us when we're working. Just because you're doing a preventative maintenance and it seems like, you know, just I'm doing the same thing over every day. Well, no, you're not. And you need to not have headphones in while you're doing a maintenance, because then you can hear the equipment running. You can hear that condenser fan motor over on the other end of the roof not running or making a loud noise. Even if you're not there to work on something, you just generated work for yourself for later. You just generated revenue for the customer, or for yourself, I should say, or for your company, when you heard that condenser fan motor going out. But if you had headphones on, you likely didn't hear that condenser fan motor going out. All right. So I'd advise against wearing headphones when you're working, or at least only wear one, so that way you can still hear what's going on around you. Okay. Let's see what else. Have I worked with any gas or water metering? And if so, what do I think about the ultrasonic meters? No, I have not worked with any water metering. I've never worked with those. So I don't know anything about the ultrasonic meters. Sorry, bud. All right. Let me see. Hey, yeah, I'm just trying to see what I'm missing in here right now. Guys, throw in preventative maintenance. Preventative or preventive? Which one is it? I don't know. Preventive or preventative? Is one past tense and one singular? Prevent and then preventative? Yeah, I think one is plural, isn't it? I don't know. We're getting into the weird English, 12th grade English crap that don't need to go down that path. Good question, though, Ruben. All right. Let me see what I'm missing in here. Okay. This is a great question. Okay. So my channel has been getting an influx. YouTube changed the algorithm, and I got a crazy number of viewers. And while I was just explaining to my wife. I'm not kidding with you. I've gotten hundreds of thousands more views than I've ever had before, right? Because YouTube changed something and they're showing my videos to a ton of people that have nothing to do with the HVAC industry. And that's actually depressing for me, okay? And when I say that, because I genuinely want to share the little bit of knowledge that I have, and it truly is not about the revenue. So even though I'm making more money, it's kind of frustrating because I have so many non-HVAC viewers commenting on my videos. I understand that it's interesting, and I appreciate the fact that they took the time to leave a comment. Don't take this the wrong way. What I'm just trying to say is it's kind of depressing when you see your views and your subscribers growing, but then you realize they're not necessarily all HVAC subscribers, okay? It's kind of a weird thing in my head because I want to be able to grow within the HVAC community more than without the HVAC community, if that makes sense, okay? I know I'm weird. I got weird problems. But anyways, I try to make it clear that my videos are not meant to be DIY videos. I do not want a homeowner watching my video and trying to fix his own furnace. I do not want a restaurant owner or a restaurant manager or a cook trying to watch my videos and trying to fix his own stuff. I understand that there's some people out there that are so intuitive that they're going to try to fix their own stuff, okay? And yes, if they're a very mechanically inclined person, they can probably watch a few things from my videos, but I purposely leave a lot of features out of my video or a lot of aspects to my video out because I'm hoping that a service technician is going to understand the thing. So I had someone comment that I had a little conversation going on with a person that was commenting about my DIY comment and how I didn't like it. And we had a good constructive conversation, nothing bad, but he was saying, hey, you know, why are you against DIY? And it's just because I'm a contractor, right? I don't want someone taking my job from me. Therefore, I don't want to take any other contractors' jobs too. So as a contractor, I don't want that. I want to keep that work for other contractors, honest, reputable contractors, okay? So I got to be able to sleep at night. And if I was making these videos and showing every single aspect of the job and everybody was going and doing their own work, that would make me feel like crap at nighttime. Now, ironically, and I understand I'm a hypocrite because I've watched a video on how to fix my dryer and how to fix my washing machine. Go figure, okay? So I get where I'm an idiot sometimes with that, okay? But my videos aren't intended for a DIY thing. And I did get a comment in that conversation. Someone said, I don't understand what you could have possibly left out of that walk-in freezer door heater video because I think I could do it all myself. Well, if you think, and that person was not a contractor, there's a lot of things that I left out of that video. And like, for instance, how to properly tape the heater, how to properly position the heater around the door threshold. You know, things like that that are very important that I purposely left out because I don't want to give everybody everything. That's my personal opinion. I don't mean to offend anybody, okay? I just don't want to take anybody's jobs, all right? All right. When I have a PM customer, what pays for the base PM, filters, belts? Do I still have a full check or do I hold back to just what was paid for, specifically customers or especially customers that don't fix things? Scott S. So first off, and I'm going to answer another question too. I am a time and materials company. I do have some restaurant customers that have a preventative maintenance price that is a negotiated price. It's probably a little bit less than the time and materials time that I spend on it. But that is only for customers that generate a lot of service calls, okay? So what I'm saying is I have some preventative maintenance customers that the PM, we end up spending more time than we're getting paid for on the PM, okay? And the reason why we do that is because we get a lot of service calls from the customer. They're a high volume restaurant. They have a lot of equipment breakdowns. So therefore, in our PM price, it's okay if we go a little bit over cleaning the equipment because we're going to make it up in the service calls. But for the most part, I bill for what it takes me. So most of my customers that do PMs, like there's only, I think probably one or two that I eat money on when I'm doing a PM. But it has to make economical sense. I'm not going to eat money and then not get service calls because that's just stupid, right? You have to look at everything at the end of the year. I don't know if I kind of answered that question, but I think that kind of does it. But yeah, I'm a time and materials company, and whatever time it takes me is what I bill the customer for the most part. So, all right. Could I give a quick opinion on the FLIR cameras I have used? Chris Cooley. So, I can give a little bit of an opinion. I don't want to completely boggle the video that I plan on doing. I'm a fan of the standalone thermal imaging cameras, okay? I am testing the FLIR C3, and I am testing the FLIR 1 Pro, which is not a standalone, and I am testing the Seek Shot Pro. The Seek Shot Pro and the FLIR 1 Pro are amazing thermal imaging cameras. Both of them have features that make that make them stand out from each other. Okay, the FLIR 1 Pro has great resolution. I'm sorry, the FLIR C3 has great resolution. I like the fact that I can stick it in my pocket. It has a smaller screen. It does not have a video feature. The Seek Shot Pro does video, so that's a plus for sure. The FLIR 1 Pro can do video when it's connected to your phone, but I'm more of a fan of having a standalone camera. So of the two that I've done, the FLIR 1 Pro and the Seek Shot Pro, they are both amazing cameras. If you want to shoot video, the Seek Shot Pro. If you just want to shoot pictures, the FLIR C3 or the Seek Shot Pro are pretty equivalent. I would just let the price dictate what you want to buy. So I'm not going to go too much more, but hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, let's see. Yeah, definitely hit the thumbs up, guys. It definitely helps me. Okay. Jared Troxel, do I use pen and paper or electronic billing? So I'm an electronic paperless billing company. We use a program called Intuit Field Service Management. It is powered by Corrigo. It seamlessly works with QuickBooks because it's actually owned by QuickBooks, okay, the same company that owns it. So there's a lot of companies that sync with QuickBooks, but Intuit Field Service Management syncs a little bit differently, and it's actually on a better level. It's very stable and very secure. The one downside to Intuit Field Service Management that I will say sucks is that you cannot do estimates without tweaking a bunch of weird settings in there. Okay, so you can't make an estimate and then turn it into an invoice. It doesn't work. That's the one downside to Intuit Field Service Management. But other than that, it does dispatching, GPS, invoicing, automatically syncs with QuickBooks. It's an amazing program. I've used it for at least, 5 to 8 years, something like that. So great program. If I missed something, throw it in here again. Hamilton Mechanical. Any advice for a newbie? He's going to be working on VRV, VRF. Well, I don't work on VRV, VRF. I don't know anything about them, but the basic refrigeration principles are still going to be there. Understand you need to pull a proper vacuum. There's going to be a lot more controls involved, and you're going to have to be computer savvy because you will be pulling out a computer, putting the checker apps in, plugging the computer in, and diagnosing that way. Understanding proper refrigeration practices. That's really the only advice I can give you. Excuse me. Can I use R290 for the grill? You got propane today, made burgers. You thought about it. Yeah, you can use R290 for the grill. It'd be awfully expensive. The difference between the propane that you use to make your burgers and the propane that we use to run a refrigerator is that it's 98% pure. It's highly refined. There is not an odorant added to R290. So R290 is technically pure, 98% pure propane. Okay, the propane that you have in your barbecue has a lot of moisture in it, and it has a smell added to it. That smell is a contaminant. So if you could afford to run R290, I bet you anything you're going to get a better, cleaner flame coming out of your barbecue. But R290 is way the hell too expensive to run your barbecue with. Let's see what else. Do I have a meter to measure sensors and kiloohms? Your flute can't measure properly. Chris Cooley, I use my Fieldpiece SC660, and it measures K ohms just fine. I would argue that your fluke should be able to measure that too. Maybe there's something going on there. A lot of times, make sure that I'm not a fan of auto ranging meters. I mean, I do, even my Fieldpiece I think does auto ranging, but if you can find a meter that doesn't auto range, that you can manually click it to the different resistance values, I find that to be a little bit better because sometimes when you're dealing with the smaller resistance values, the auto range can be a little funky. But yeah, I'm a fan of the Fieldpiece. Well, I have the 660, but I think they have the 680 now as the new one. I don't have the 680 yet, but I'm sure I'll get it eventually. How much time should be done in HVAC to tackle side jobs? How much time should be done? I don't know what you mean by there, Rick Y4, to tackle side jobs. I don't understand that, bud. Yeah, that's rich people problems, like Sean Mack says with R290 for the barbecue, for sure. That's a first world problem, if I've ever seen one. Just got your SC680 today. True Tech for the win. HVACR whiz. See, he's got his SC680 before me. I need to get one too. I'm gonna have to buy one. All right, let's see what else we got. I'm gonna get to my list here. Great question. Why don't I use flush when there's a burnout? So someone asked me when I was doing a burnout on a compressor. So I've never been a fan of flush because what I noticed is that, you know, when you push flush into a system, let's just use RX11, I think, which is made by New Calgon. When you push that in, what it does is it has an accelerant in it. It has some kind of a pressurized, it's usually like, I don't know, whatever refrigerant they use to push it through the system, right? To propel it through the system. But then there's a solvent basically in there. And what I find is that I don't get all the solvent out of the system that I put into the system. And while, yes, some of it is going to vaporize the solvent, I don't quite buy that. I'm pushing a lot of solvent into that system and I'm not necessarily getting it all out. So that really made me start thinking. And then I heard a podcast with John Pastorello from Refrigeration Technologies on HVAC School. I don't know the name of the podcast, but it was one of them. And he was talking about how that solvent can actually be bad for your compressor. And I was already thinking in my head, it seems kind of weird that I'm pushing all this liquid into there and it's not coming out, right? So I decided to stop using acid away or acid neutralizers and all that different stuff, the additives. I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now where I haven't used any additives, and I can say that I haven't had any negative repercussions. I have gone back and changed suction filters. So my proper practice on a burnout system is I'm going to install a high acid liquid line filter dryer, usually the Sporlan HH dryers. And then I'm going to install a high acid suction line filter dryer, an HH filter dryer. And I'm going to go back and do pressure drop tests across the suction filter. If the suction filter has a pressure drop of more than 3 psi or a temperature differential of anywhere from 3 to 5 degree temperature differential across the suction dryer, from inlet to outlet, then I'm going to go ahead and change the suction and the liquid dryer again. But if I don't get that pressure differential, I'm not going to change it and I'll just leave the suction filter in the system. I might do an acid test too, but I've never had a system that I've gone back and had to change the oil or anything like that. Usually the compressor replacement takes care of it. But what I will say is when I have a burnout, I will usually isolate the system out, cut the evaporator out of the system, not take it out, but cut it out completely, blow the evaporator with nitrogen, get all the crap out of it, blow the condenser with nitrogen, and kind of blow all the crap out. And then I just personally don't find the need for additive or solvents to clean the system. So that's my personal preference. I do not know everything. I've just chosen to go that path. So what is my preferred dryer type? Well, I don't deal anything. I mean, I prefer to put in a flare dryer. I like the Sporlan brand. They're just a great dryer. If I have an acid burnout, I'm going to use the HH. If not, I'm going to use the standard Sporlan, and I prefer to put in a flare whenever possible, especially with remote equipment on the roof, because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to take my torches up there to change the dryer. So let me see what else I got. What advice would I give on how to ask an employer for a raise? You've never asked for one before, Mr. Psychometrics. Great question, bud. So here's how I would approach this, because I'm on the opposite end. I'm the employer now, right? So what I would like my guys to do, and what I recommend people to do all the time, is to think, okay, how have you yourself, reflect on yourself, how have you improved in the last year or last 2 years? What obstacles have you overcame? Okay. Or do you feel like you just need a raise just because you've worked there? If you haven't improved and you've just been there for time, it's going to be harder to ask for a raise. But if you've improved, whether it be people skills, customer service skills, technical skills, right? That's good. But I would highly advise you to go to your boss or your manager or whoever and say, hey, you know what? I really would like to make more money. What can I do? What goals would you like to set for me to reach before we can potentially consider a raise for me? So ask him what you can do for him instead of asking when they can give you a raise. So just go and say, you know what? I feel like things are at this point. I feel like I've excelled past this point. I feel like the last time I got a raise, I was making this much and I've gone through these obstacles and I've overcome them. And I'd like to know what I could do to improve my skills as they stand right now, so that way I could be considered for a raise. I think that's the best way to ask for a raise. All right. Let me see what I'm missing in here, Scott. Scott, you said, you noticed that I don't use chemicals to clean coils. Can I explain why? You will almost fight customers with full service, including... I do chemicals, Scott. I use refrigeration technologies as much as possible, or even sometimes I'll use the new Calgon, the blue coil cleaner. In the summertime, I use coil cleaners all the time. Now, if they don't need it, then I'll just use water. But no, I use chemicals. There's nothing wrong with chemicals. I prefer using the Hvacr HD cleaner by Refrigeration Technologies, but that is a very diluted down, essentially degreaser, because that's very safe for the environment and very safe for the roof and different things. But if it's an impacted coil, I'm going to get out the new Calgon, the blue crap, Coil Bright, whatever it's called, and clean the hell out of that thing. So no, I have no problem with cleaning coils with cleaners, just only if they need it. So, you notice? Okay, yeah, I already answered that one. All right. Hopefully I answered that question for you. Stop the flare dryer madness. Nah, man, I'm a flare dryer person on the roof all day long, Scott. So, or Sean. All right, let me go to my list here. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this one. Seems like I'm beating a dead horse with this topic, but I will keep covering it until people understand it. So someone had asked me about head pressure control valves and why we need them. Okay, they were from another place where they typically use fan cycling or motor controls to slow down the motors. So a head pressure control valve is just another means of controlling head pressure. Why do we need to control head pressure? Because we need a pressure differential across our expansion valve, okay? Especially thermostatically controlled expansion valves, especially the older expansion valves. Now that we have balance port valves, the pressure differential is not as critical. But you need to understand it like this. That expansion valve has a range at which it can operate. It can operate between this range and this range right here. But it can operate between this range and this range when the refrigerant is flowing at a certain rate. If the refrigerant flow goes down, then the valve can't maintain the proper operation and it can't feed the evaporator coil correctly. That is why we need a head pressure control device, whether it be fan cycling, fan speed control, or a head pressure control valve. Me personally, my preference is a head pressure control valve, but other people prefer fan cycling control. There's goods and bads about both, okay? The whole thing to understand, though, is that with a thermostatically controlled expansion valve, that pressure differential is very important. Now, the newer valves are much better at dealing with a lower pressure differential, okay? But the older valves were very critical that they had to have that set pressure differential. Okay, you understand you've got liquid pressure coming into the expansion valve. Hang on just a second. You understand you've got liquid refrigerant coming into this expansion valve right here, and it's feeding through this tiny little orifice. Well, it has to spray the refrigerant at a certain flow rate. Okay, I'm dumbing this down to make it sound the simplest. It has to spray the refrigerant at a certain flow rate for the valve to feed correctly into the coil so the refrigerant can boil off in the coil and it can absorb the heat. If it's not coming in at the set pressure within the range at which it needs to in this valve, think of it like this. Think of a water hose, okay? You've got a water hose, you're out in your front yard, and you take the nozzle off of it and you turn the water on. The water's going to piss out, right? It's only going to go maybe 18 inches and then it's going to flow out at a high rate, right? But it's just going to piss out. But if you put a nozzle on there and you squeeze the nozzle, you can shoot that water 25 feet across the yard. That's the pressure differential, okay? So that valve is set to operate with a set pressure differential going across it. Now that we get into more advanced expansion valves, balance port valves, the pressure differential needed gets lower and lower. And then we get into electronically controlled valves, EEVs, and the pressure differential is minute what you need. So we can actually drop the head pressure way down. Take a Heatcraft condensing unit right now. A Heatcraft condensing unit for 404A refrigerant used to run, we would have 180 PSI pressure, bypass pressure on the head pressure control valve. That's this guy right here. Nowadays, on a Heatcraft condensing unit, we can go all the way down to 150 PSI on that head pressure control valve. That's the bypass pressure at which this head pressure control valve is going to start to bypass. So the pressure differential is very important, but as we get into more electronically controlled valves and the new balance port valves, the pressure differential, we can go a little bit lower, and we don't need it to be as high of a pressure differential, but we still need to understand that we need a difference in the system, though, because we got to be able to drive that refrigerant through the system, okay? And we got to drive that refrigerant through the evaporator. So That's the understanding, and that's why we need head pressure control devices, whether it be a head pressure control valve, a fan cycling control, or a motor speed controller, okay? Hopefully I'm not beating that dead horse down again. So let me see what else. Let me see what I'm missing in here. Rainbow, do I use a micro engage, and what's my rule for calling new and old systems tight? What are my favorite types of jobs in the trade? So my rule on a micro engage is if it's an old system, if I can get it below 1,000 microns and it holds, I mean, it really depends. I have to evaluate each system differently. If I know we've got a lot of refrigerant leaks, if it's a restaurant where I know we have leaks, I'm just going to get it as low as I can and run it, because you're never going to achieve the perfect vacuum on a system that has multiple leaks. And it's not practical that you're going to fix every single leak in the system. Valves leak, solenoid valves leak, receiver packings leak, everything leaks. So, but if I can't get a system below 1,000 microns, there's definitely a problem. I should definitely be able to get it below 1,000 microns for sure. Okay. 1,000 is kind of my absolute highest that I can run a vacuum. And that somewhat has to hold too. Okay. I'm going to try to achieve perfection and get 200 microns with a decay of no more than 500 microns if I can. Okay. But that's almost impractical too. Stuff happens, right? What are my favorite service calls? My favorite service calls, I love designing systems. When it comes to designing exhaust fan control systems, I love designing refrigeration systems, doing load calculations and speccing out equipment for walk-in coolers. One of my favorite things to ever do was I do work for a stainless steel shop where I make custom equipment for them. They're a manufacturer, and getting to design their stainless steel equipment. So basically they come to me and they say, hey, we're making a countertop refrigerator. It's going to be this big. I need you to put the refrigeration in it. I need you to wire it. I need you to put condensing units in. Those are my favorite ones. So I'm working in a manufacturing plant. I'm running copper lines, hiding them behind stainless steel. I'm being a manufacturer essentially, right? Those are my favorite jobs. So let's see what I'm missing here. Scott, let's see what I missed from Scott. Question, how do I feel about ECM motors, and do I use any special tools for testing them? Scott, I really don't deal with a lot of ECM motors. I do run into them, but not so much these days. I run into a lot of VFD, variable frequency drives, three-phase equipment. But I got no problem with ECM motors so long as you have proper airflow, right? If you have high static pressure, you're going to potentially run into problems with ECM motors. ECM motors do not solve airflow problems, okay? They actually amplify them in some cases and create bigger problems. So, but yeah, no, I don't deal with a lot of ECMs, but you know, I'm not afraid of them or anything. So let me see what else I got in here. Let me see what I'm missing here. How often do I test my vacuum hoses? So Ruben, I would say probably every like 5 or 6 times before I hook my, I usually put my core removal tools on, right? And then I'll isolate them and put the vacuum gauge on the edge of the vacuum core removal tool, and then pull a vacuum with the vacuum core removal tool closed. So every 5 or 6 times, and I'll test my hoses to see how low they pull. Lately, I've been using the True Blue hoses, and they work really well, but I also have the Appion Mega Flow hoses, the big giant black 1/2-inch hoses. Those ones are good too. So, you know, I got not really much bad to say about both of them. They're both great hoses. Let's see what else I got in here. All right. I think I am going to start wrapping this up, man. I really appreciate you guys coming in here. I want to say something, you know, if I can ask you guys to take one thing from my videos or my live streams, it's just to simply take a step back and look at the big picture. It's as simple as that, guys. Just take a step back and look at the big picture. I really appreciate you guys coming in here. Send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com if I missed your questions. Thanks again, and we will catch you guys on the next one, okay?